number 5 is Fréwaka. I hope I'm saying that right. This movie is from Ireland, which, for my American friends out there, Ireland is a country, not to be confused with Northern Ireland, which is part of the United Kingdom. They primarily speak English and Irish Gaelic, and most of this film is in Irish Gaelic, which is really interesting. So the film follows Shu, who is an Irish nurse whose abusive and neglectful mother has just passed away. Instead of dealing with that grief and, you know, working with her partner to kind of get her mom's affairs in order, she ends up basically just kind of running away. So she takes an in-home nurse job at a kind of like remote and mostly rural part of Ireland and ends up working for a woman who, surprise, surprise, is completely unstable and difficult and strange. She believes that fairies are real and that fairies are basically kind of coming for her. Now, let me say a few things. In America, when we think fairies, we think of like Tinkerbell or like really ugly, you know, bookshelf tchotchkes you see at like New Age bookstores or whatever. In Irish folklore, fairies are much more complex and interesting. They're almost more kind of like trickster characters. They can be helpful, they can assist people along in their journeys, but they can also be mischievous and dangerous. And this film presents them much more in that way. The genre of this film is folk horror. Folk horror is a genre that I feel like Americans are less familiar with. One of the main themes in folk horror is when modern people forget the old ways, right? The old ways come back to bite you. And it creates this great parallel that she's kind of like dealing with the legacy of her mother while also dealing with this kind of like folk legacy or this cultural legacy that, you know, a lot of people her age have kind of forgotten. For me as a horror fan, I tend not to love folk horror films because oftentimes they're trying really hard to like update and preserve these old folk traditions, put them in a modern horror context. They tend to be a little, you know, kind of like toothless, like not very aggressive or in your face. This movie, however, was a genuine horror film and a fantastic one and one that I think you should see.